we have our new dedicated session, Words That Liberate with Laura. Imagine navigating your day with an awareness that allows you to choose words that give you energy instead of draining it, confidence instead of doubt, and ease instead of struggle. We all know what the words we speak mean. We've all learned their definitions, and we use them appropriately in conversation. But what if I told you that every word we use carries more than just its dictionary definition? What if words have an immediate, visceral impact on us, one we're often not consciously aware of? To dive into this, I have with us again Laura Berkey, and the word that we are going to discuss today is decide. Laura, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you.
So tell us more about decide. What does this word actually mean?
Decide. Okay. So thank you for the intro. And I'm just going to kind of double down on that. That mostly people walk around and they think that the diction, the word choices that they use are merely tools for your mind and for conveying a message to people. And so they don't maybe think deeper about impact of those words. And people will try to talk influentially and empowering, inspiring, and that works. So it's not that people aren't doing this, but what I've seen over the course of my career and just what I love to do, that there's a whole lot more to the words we choose, and it's immediate. It's immediate impact. And so that's what I want to illuminate and show people. And so we'll start with the word decide today. Okay, so I'm going to first ask, do you mind if I if I ask you a question, Chris?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So what do you want? What is something you want, Chris? It could be something you've wanted for a long time, or it's something that's kind of new and fresh in your mind, and you're like, I think I want that.
No, I think that I want to. I guess I now want to write a book since I've been pushed so much into it.
Mhm. Okay, so good. So you want to write a book.
Yep.
Yeah. And so when you say the word want in that sentence, I want to write a book, will you just notice? And I love doing this real time because I think people will really relate with it and they'll even be doing this as they watch this. But when you say I want, honestly, what is from the neck down? And it's really centering on the word want. What do you feel? What do you notice anyway when you think I want to write a book?
There's a little bit of a like a restriction almost, like a pulling back.
Yeah, not uncommon. And that's the same thing for me too. And there's a whole lot I could say about the word want, but today we're focused on deciding, but I'm using want as a very contrasting word to deciding. So, want actually, the origin of the word want means to be deficient. It means to be lacking. If you go look at the origin of the word in the etymology, it literally means to lack or to need. So when you use that word, your body has the experience of, I am lacking, I am deficient. And so there is a real contrast or a conflict, an inner conflict we're dealing with in the moment we say, I want to write a book. When we use the word want, I want this thing, which would be a gain in your life. I'm doing this, I'm creating it, I'll share it. But then, and that's what the mind is, that's the track it's on. But the body's track is, I don't have that. I'm deficient of that. I lack that. And that's all the point I want to make is that the body takes the hit. And a lot of people are not aware that the body's taking a hit. And why that is important is because the body is what determines, dictates, and decide what actions you actually take. And I will repeat this over and over every time I'm doing one of these. And so it's really important and it's very valuable that one would really start paying attention to, ooh, when I say that, what is my body doing? Because while my head's all in on the game, if my body isn't, we're going to be circling the drain. We're going to be wandering into the forest. We're going to, hunker down and probably not get moving. Does that land, Chris? Does that make sense what I'm saying to you?
No, that does make sense, and actually, I was a little bit wandering, in my own mind for a second there, and I went back to even something as simple as, well, I want a hot dog, and it was kind of the same thing. So it's very interesting that because they're two very different things, but that one is a more large undertaking than just getting a hot dog, but the reaction was almost the same.
Wow. So that's awesome awareness on your part. And it is a good thing to bring up because I am not I am not broadcasting and insisting people never use the word want. I want people to recognize when you use that word, what's happening, not just up here, but what's happening in the whole system. That's really what I want because there will be times that want is the exact right word to use. So use it. Please use the word. And there will be times that using the word want is going to work against you. And that's the point of this. Okay, so you want to write a book. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you another question, Chris. In your lifetime, and I don't know if we did this last time, and this may come up again in the future as well, but in your lifetime, can you just recall, and you don't have to say them out loud here, but just recall, and your brain works really fast, three victories you've had in your lifetime. It could be as you can go back to 9 years old, 20 years old, 25 years old. Just go back to a time, any memory. I bought my first bike. I lost 25 pounds. I bought my first house. I painted a room. Anything that to this day, when you think of it, you're like, yeah, I still feel accomplished and some pride about that.
Yeah, I can think of three. Yeah.
Yeah, three of them.
Yep.
Okay, great. And so, my point is, and just see if this tests out with you, that those three things that you just shared very likely are the result of a decision you made. So just go back to any one of them and search for Chris. Yeah, I did. I decided to blank. And then I had that victory. And just see if that tests out. You do not have to say, oh, yeah, Laura, it does for face for this interview.
Hmm. No, you're right. Yeah, I did. Yeah, because actually, you're right because one of those was actually a long time in the making, and I said that um, we're going back probably about 10 years. I wanted to move my family back to Canada, right? So I actually have done that, but I noticed it took like you know 7 years to do.
Yes. Yes. And that is a very essential point to make is that typically for most people who are hearing this and who are just living a life that aren't hearing this, decisions usually are slow builds. They usually are. And so what I'm wanting to show people is okay, that's pretty typical for most people. For a long time their house started to look like crap and clutter and mess and whatever, and then one day they just couldn't take it anymore. And they're like, that's it. I am cleaning this house. I'm going to get a dumpster. I'm going to rent a dumpster. I'm going to get everything out of this or whatever. I'm going to paint the walls fresh and I'm going to redo this. That's a decision. And those decisions are slowly built because what's happening is over time, there's so many moving parts that get you to move your family, one, but just even to get to the decision point that is so powerful, even to get to that, there is a lot of kind of working it out, feeling it out, shopping it around in your mind until a day comes and then you decide. Now, let me tell you about the word decide. The etymology of the word decide, I had this written down earlier, is to determine. And now we're going to the origin of this word. It means to determine. It's Old English, and it's putting some French and Latin together to determine something and to cut off. So literally to decide means to cut off in its original form. And think about it. The moment one decides, I'm going to lose 200 pounds, I'm going to move across country, I'm going to quit this job and get that job, right out of college, I'm going to go get, work in radio, you have effectively cut off any other option. And that's what a decision is. I've cut out any other option, any other possibility. It is this. And that's powerful because you become very singular focused and then your whole body's in on it. So it's a powerful moment. And almost any victory or success anyone has ever had, they will find if they do the research in their mind or to the memory, gosh, that's right. I decided I won't be treated like this. And so I broke up with the person. I decided I'm miserable in this career. I'm going to quit. Okay. Does that make sense?
No, that definitely makes sense. And even the decisions that didn't work out so well, I noticed that when even though I made the decision in the moment, I made the decision, I actually felt better than just the wanting to do something about
Will you tell me about that? Will you tell me what you've know like, what you're realizing right now? It's like, "Oh, but I felt better." What did you feel, Chris? What did you feel more than what you thought, even though you're gonna have to use thoughts to describe what you felt when you made the decision?
it. Well, one of the decisions was I was kind of going back and forth on it, and I said, well, I want to do this, but it but I remember there was a very distinct difference, and we're actually going back a lot farther, back when I wasn't really aware, when I was about, I don't know, probably, I think I was about 19 or 20. And the decision then was to see if I'd move back to, actually at that point, Nicaragua, and said something that I might like to do and might want to do. But then the day I made the decision, you know, regardless of anything else that I had those sort of nagging thoughts about maybe shouldn't. But when I made that decision, it felt lighter
Yeah.
rather than having it running on the background all the time.
And let me just put I'll say it differently than I felt lighter. Wow, the energy stopped bleeding out. And now I got to my energy was looping in me. I got to retain or contain my own vital force energy on now this new clarity, this focus, this decision. And I get to use all of that to this effort now. Does that resonate?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, now you said something that is awesome. You said, "I remember," like, you remember the day you made the decision. You just outed that. You remember the day. That's how powerful decisions are. You can remember the moment, maybe not the calendar day. Some people can. I remember it was January 2nd, 2019, but you can remember the day. Now, think about this. I'm going to throw in another word because it's a word that's similar and close to decide, which is choice. So, what's the difference between choosing and deciding? That's for another day. But I will say this, can you really remember the last time you chose? You made a choice? Like, I mean, do you remember the day that you made the choice to have the soup instead of the salad when the waitress said you get a soup or salad as your side? Can you really remember the day that, or even the restaurant that you had made the choice? I think I'll have the soup instead of the salad.
Hmm. I mean, a very specific one I actually can, so probably makes me weird.
Uh-huh.
I decided to have the soup instead of something else.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, that you use the word decide, and I'm showing that choice to make a choice is not as weighty and is as a big deal as deciding. Deciding is a much heavier. It's got more octane than a choice to me. And the real simple way to kind of compare them is you choose when you go to your local drugstore, Walmart, Target, whatever, to get your next tube of toothpaste. You choose, am I going to get this brand or that brand? You decide, I'm going to move across country. You don't choose, I think I'm just going to choose to go move to Canada, like, versus Oregon. You don't choose that. That's a decision. So there, I just wanted to kind of just say there is a difference between those two words and what's in them. And so I do want to now say this about deciding. So typically, decisions are a slow, long buildup to the moment of decision. Once a decision is made, that's it. We're packing up and we are moving out of here. When you make a decision and all parts you were in it, and because of the resulting feeling, I feel so clear. I feel so calm. I feel so solid. That's evidence you have legit made a decision. It's gonna happen. And here's what I know, 28 years in coaching, I promise you, when you have a moment like that, no matter what the journey is going to be to have it actually play out, you will land on the target. You will. Okay, that's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make, because it is to empower people, and like you said in the opening, wouldn't you love to have more ease versus struggle? Wouldn't you like more confidence instead of doubt? You can deliberately decide. You can actually be more deliberate and intentional in making decisions. And so, the way to use your power of deciding, which you already have done so many times in your life already, is to, in a way, generate, manufacture that in a shorter amount of time. So let's go back to your book. I want to write a book, right? I want to write a book. However, you didn't say, well, Laura, I've decided to write a book. Like, because that trumps, I'll even pass want. I've decided I'm writing the book. What you said is some people have said I should write a book, and so I'm going to write a book. And I've had the same thing, right? And so for you, Chris, and it'd be great, it'd be so cool if you would do this in between now and our next word session. You deliberately and intentionally work yourself into a decision. Now, do you have any questions about how to do that, or how would you do that? Because you've already decided plenty in your life. So either would you be willing to be like, well, here's how I think I'll work myself into a decision about it? Or Laura, how does one work, themselves into a decision?
Well, I know how I usually do it. I usually do the pros and the cons and that list and those
Mhm.
different things. But how else can you do it?
Okay. So because the truth is out that what we think, I want to write a book, triggers emotions and feelings. It triggers a whole bunch of stuff. But in short, it'll trigger an emotional state. And that emotional state will either feel empowered, it'll feel excited, inspired, energized, or it will trigger an activated feeling that kind of has you shrink a little bit, contract, constrict, I don't know, and doubt yourself, right? Okay. So if you're at the point where it's like, yeah, I want to write a book, but I don't feel the same way about writing a book like I did, we're definitely packing up and moving to Canada, right? If it doesn't, then what you want to do is you want to work on the emotional Chris about writing a book. If right now you just feel like, yeah, I can take it or leave it, or yeah, it makes sense, and it all feels very heady. Well, it makes sense. It'd be a good idea. People clearly will probably read it. People are asking me to write. I've got something to say. If it's all heady, you want to do some work to get yourself fueled. You want to start literally getting energy to move in your body. Okay.
Hmm.
And so you talked about using a pros or cons list, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Another way to do it, and that's a great way to start turning the crank on the emotional energy. To me, a very, very, it just works all the time. So it's a very easy thing to do. One is write two lists. One, in addition to the pros and cons, you could also say, if what if I don't write a book? What if I choose not to write this book and just write down anything you could that comes up about not writing this book? Okay. If I don't write this book, this, and then just whatever happens, just go with it. If I don't write this book, what'll happen? And see what that does. Okay, see what that does in your emotional energy. Another thing to write out is, why would I even be interested? Not why would I want. I really would really keep that word out of this. Why would I even be interested in writing a book? And see what comes of that. And then you can come up with your own questions too. You can self coach yourself here, which is simply just to ask questions. What you're looking for is, I need my emotional self to respond to this, not my what makes sense pragmatic practical self. And so really what you're all that you're doing is you're turning the crank. You're putting your hand almost like, the dolls that used to have a crank in the back. You're doing your own cranking to get the crank from the doll makes the doll talk and hello and whatever. You are turning a crank to get yourself to be moved. I've got to write this book. Oh, I'm so ready to write this. And then even if you said, I do want to write this book, you can see that you are very close to the decision point.
Yeah, it does land a lot different saying I'm going to rather than I want to.
Mhm.
Hmm. Well, that is very interesting. This has been a great discussion. I know one of you respectful of your time too. We got to save some for next week too. We got to save for the next week's word.
Yes, yes.
Let's get onto that. Thank you so much for being here, Laura, and thank you to all our listeners. And maybe drop in the comments. When's the last time you made a decision? And maybe let's try and figure out when it went from maybe want or maybe to I'm going to. And also, just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, then maybe go out and be that inspiration or motivation for someone else. And we'll see you again soon. Cool. So, a little bit of a spoiler